Howdys and salutations, y'all, and welcome back. Pardon me. I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit of a low energy Thursday for me, but it can't be that low energy because I am excited at how far we've come on this. Even before the stream, I was just looking like, wow, we actually drew a thing. And it actually looks, not bad. Granted, like, because it's the same pose, it's still like that's the kind of thing that some people would be like, oh, you just do a filter on it and then you're set. But A, it wouldn't look the same, and B, I wouldn't have learned all I did. So that for the next one, we can do an even more original piece. Although I do think that it's fair to call this original in its own right. Just so long as you credit, obviously. I mean, at this point, thinking everyone knows it, but even so. Like, obviously, I was drawn directly from this reference. In any case, I have been doing a little bit of research, and and also playing a little more Elden Ring because apparently I can't escape it. In addition to the fact that experienced a fun bug I may have talked about last week, but it still cracked me the heck up. I've also attempted to make a new character, and holy cow, that character creator is just as janky as I remembered. They're never good. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. It's just darn near impossible to figure out how to get to any of them because nothing moves what you think it would, and everything's connected. In any case, in addition to playing Elden Ring and that funny bug with it, just in case I mentioned it last time, I won't act like it's a big surprise. I was trying on some of the different armors after I'd beaten the game because that's what you do. And one character by the name of Malekith is associated with destined death. And when I put his armor on, my game crashes instantly. I did test it; it's repeatable. It happens every time I put his armor on. Upon some research, apparently this is a bug that can happen to any armor set, and you just have to um, fix your game files. The Steam has a tool for it, so I can get it sorted out. Which, thank heavens. But I almost don't want to do that because it's the only one that it seems to crash on, and it cracks me the heck up that of all the armors that it could, it's the one for destined death. So yeah, Malekith, thank you for haunting me. This is what I get for killing you in one try with my mimic tier. Was probably uncool of me, but you know, I had a deadline to meet. The anniversary of this game is in like 3 days, maybe less. When exactly did Elden Ring come out? Elden Ring launch date. For how anticipated it was, you'd think I'd remember it. February 25th. Okay, it's a Saturday. Should be fun. Maybe they'll say something, maybe they won't. People get really, 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 really over hyped about announcements, and then they get really sour when they don't get ones. That said, I mean, the game has sold like 20 million copies at this point. I think they'll do fine. So yeah, whatever happens, it's fun. Should try. Highly recommend. In any case, the other thing I researched when I wasn't getting distracted playing Elden Ring or doing my day job or trying to sleep was some of the color layer types because I wanted to figure out how to do this in a way where we're doing it smart and not just blind filling colors and junk. And the fact that we've done all our flats on one layer was probably dumb for this stage, but I don't plan on going crazy on the coloring stage, truthfully. I mean, the gradient map already looked stinking cool with fairly minimal effort. But also, so I'm doing this more for the learning, and to be able to get better reds and golds and such. But yeah, actually, on that note, let's crack open the color reference again. Amidst the frankly embarrassing amount of fan art that I've been downloading, because there's lots of really good art of this game, much better than what we've done here. But maybe one day we'll get to that stage. More importantly, there's also really lots of funny art. All in all, it's been fun. Where the heck are my reference images? Did I download too many? And now I can't find them? Ah, there we go. The answer was yes. So yeah, we'll see how much we get on this. I'm gonna probably stick to some level of stylization, given that we're already leaning that away. And then, as I get this next layer set up, I just want to say that I am excited for another art piece, although I need to determine exactly what. But I'd love to do something with Mikola famously known as uh, Malenia's brother or sister, depending on who you ask, and also as the name that she shouts every time she stabs you, which is why most people remember the name Mikola, and why when you look up Mikola on Google, most of the results are Malenia boss fight. um, we'll see if they do more with Mikola. I'm worried that it's going to be another one of those twist actually evil characters, but it seems like at least in their youth they were pretty cool. Or they hypnotized everyone into liking them. But they, still seem to have generally been pretty cool about some stuff. Gotta say, I like the Halleck tree. No one else seemed to like the Halleck tree. I really like the Halleck tree. Yes. Let's get this layer set up. I'm gonna set it to, I suppose, rather fittingly color. Because what this mode does is it lets us throw colors on here. Oh, it's gonna be weird getting away from grayscales. This is gonna be way too much. But it allows us to mess with the saturation and the hue, but it will not mess with the value of the layer below, I think. At least that's what I was told. Sure seems to be the case. In which case, wow, you could do some really interesting abstract stuff with that too. Like, not that I'm gonna be able to just do off the top of my head, but I could totally imagine. Like, have you seen some of that stuff where there's just like abstract shapes for the colors? They wouldn't do it like this, but but you could do some interesting stuff, is my point. That's how the polygon tool works? Oh, right, you just set X number of sides. If I actually want to do this, then I should go to an old fave. Polyline. Anyway, this will not be our final coloring choice. How did I... Oh, I guess double tapping just closes it. That's good to know. And just real sloppy in here. Oh, interesting. That seems to have done just a full-on fill instead of... Oh, the layer's normal now. Can you not do that on a color layer? Interesting. Anyway, no, what you'd actually want to do would just be like cool, like very simple geometric shapes. Um, huh. I don't know how that stopped being a color layer. Oh, I must have undone it at some point when I was undoing the initial doodles. Yeah, I mean, you could just thinking blast in color. You could even get like a nice. Hmm. While we're messing with things and learn, just messing around and figuring some of this stuff out would be a decent opportunity. Oh, I suppose I also ought to. Well, I need to clip it too. No, not in the fine detail outline. Oh no. Here. Put away fine detail outline. Where'd it go? No. Between them. Thank you. Flip to this layer. And then we could just... Obviously, you could just blast stuff in, which wouldn't be great, but it maintains the value. Got kind of like a rose tinty deal going on here. And that's with a way too aggressively saturated red in any case. So, ourselves a nice pale gold. Like a rose gold thing going on here. Which isn't what we'd actually want because it doesn't, whoops, it doesn't contrast very well with the actual red of everything else. But if you had to choose one color for Malenia, you should actually probably just choose red. But rose gold would be an interesting choice, I would say. Worth considering. How do I keep... Oh, wow. Take a different approach there then. This has been a weirdly fun pen in its own right, even to just mess around with. I mean, heck, we could even Go over some of these back with a layer of gray to mute them back down. And like getting some pretty good color blocking just in with that. Of course, I don't think that's, end goal what we want to do, but there is something to be said for those mellow tones. And in actual case, it might be fun to just go in with like a nice soft goldy tone. Let's something like that. And like this would allow us to focus. I don't know what we could focus on. Again, we've done so much by getting the value in already. It almost feels silly to even bother with anything else. Whoops, I've got to. That said, maybe let's start with a smaller one and actually go for something of a painterly effect, which is an exaggeration because this super doesn't look painterly unless you've got a very different style going with it, which we sort of did on some of our thumbnails, to be fair. But you can sort of build up the amount of gold on here, which is interesting, because like I could do this one, just one layer. And again, I'm just scribbling this in right now. Obviously, I'm not staying within the lines at all. This isn't what you'd want to do for a final one, but for while we're experimenting, the helm to have mostly more of a gold tint than this lower one. Same for up here, but not so much for most of the silver work. Not even silver work, just the braided bits. A little on some of the edges, but all in all, it's not a very golden part of the helm. Truthfully, the feathers, they're more gold in the lower section, but not like crazy. But then we get, like, there's just a few accents or sections where it really ought to do a smaller brush and go for it, because the degree to which it's golden is pretty bold, especially up here on the front. And here around these. Although maybe not in the openings. We got to work on that, but oh well. And what I'm messing with here by going over it like layer by layer is essentially, it's basically the saturation. It's hard to say because obviously the color we picked here has a hue, a value, and a saturation already. But actually, that makes me wonder, could I set this to any value and end up getting the same result out of it? Well, yeah, scribble's not great, but we can get like a kind of interesting amount of gold in here, or intensity of it, would be another way to put that, perhaps. A smattering there. Yeah, it's something we'd have to experiment with. But what I do definitely want to experiment with, real quick, is this value question. So let's just set this to 10, make ourselves a nice circle here on 2 different values below it. And then let's go straight down, or at least mostly straight down. We're still getting pretty close to the same. Okay. So yeah, this layer does work. Whereas if we change the saturation, that's really actually notably different. Although still not bad, because even up here, okay, no, there is a degree of boldness to this that the others didn't have. So there's more to it. But yeah, so this axis is value from white to black. This axis, or rather, let's look at the top one, is saturation because it goes from no hue to a lot of hue. And then these axes don't actually have anything. Oh, this one clearly does. This one doesn't have much change, which is why you often see like that triangle chart instead of the square. But I think that does miss you out on some grays, some interesting tones. In any case, I'm going to stick with our lovely sort of soft, unalloyed gold, as it were. But I'm also going to go and clean all this up because we've just been messing around with it. Okay, let's think about actual colors. And we can do this with the Milli pen, or I mean the XP pen works too. This is just going to be really bold compared to it. So we can throw down colors quickly. And this is the other challenge again, because that was all of our values were on one layer, which is super not good practice because it comes back to bite you at this stage. Well, there's other reasons, but that's a big one. Let's see if fill works like this. Yep, just as jankily as always, but it does work. When did these edges get so rough? I don't remember them being that rough. Maybe they always were. But all of that up there feels a lot more pixelated than it used to. Oh, yep, that was it. If I turn off the fine detail outline, it loses that nice little fine line that's still pixelated technically, but helps cover those awkward transitions. Still debating where I want that and where I don't, because like I don't know that I want that across the whole piece. It looks kind of jarring, especially like down here. Although that is kind of a neat effect there. It kind of helps give the fuzz a little extra. But like it's definitely good on the metalwork pieces because you want that sharpness and crispness. It's not as good, well, especially on the hair because we kind of went rogue on the hair. Um, but like on the face and on the cloak and such, it's not as useful. Also, it's literally just wrong places in some spots. So like, don't know what to say. Yep, okay, even multi-tapping, it still ends up being the same. So yeah, that's pretty good. Or this type of layer, I mean, is pretty much exactly what we were hoping for, or at least what I was. Let's see. I'll be honest, but beyond this point, I don't actually have a ton of plans. Everything we did with value was pretty much everything I would have thought of doing with just the coloring phase, which is why I was willing to spend so much time on it. But it also means that there's less stuff here that I'm immediately like, oh, here's something we can work on. Here's something to do. So it might be a good excuse to work with some texture brushes, either just like paintbrush types or a few different things to try to work on building off of the textures we've already gotten from our value here. Because, cool as this looks, and honestly, the stylized shadows mean we may not want to lean into texture too much. But, something to be said for trying it. Hey, so many stray things to clean up. See. Oh, that's neat. Okay, so with the fill tool, if you tap on a spot and hold, you can move to other places to fill them, but it sticks to the same, I guess, value. Because I can color these, but it wasn't doing that. Dang, that's actually super cool. Not sure it's exactly what we wanted, but it's not a bad effect, really. So let's leave it for now, and then we'll come back and reevaluate. You know what? At the very least, as a bit of texture, let's uh, let's do our coloring with the mechanical pencil for anything that has like a nice border like that. It won't make much difference, truthfully. Even with the pencil, it won't. But it'll give us some softer edges, which would be a plus. Although truthfully, that may look so patchy that we want like a layer of like the very faint gold tone on it before we even do like a second layer of patchy texture. That may be the way to do it, truthfully. Just like get one big old color block and then work on textures over it, which would make a lot of sense, truthfully. So I think that's what we'll focus on for now is just getting a flat base layer in here. I want one that's fainter for some of the silver work up here. Because truthfully, the value is going to make a huge difference in this, but also changing our actual colors or hues also important. I can just cover a lot of this stuff up. Just funny to think about because this is also transparent. And yeah, I'm going to clean out the bits in the center. It's just almost easier to do those later because there's so much fine detail on these, especially on the inner bit here. Maybe we can try to be careful on these outer edges. But where stuff is overlayered on itself 3-4 times, like, yeah. Another area where the line works a little off. Funny how that happens. And yeah, I'm trying to listen to my own advice that I repeat again and again of just focusing on broad areas first and dealing with details second. So I'm not going to clean out the dark parts just yet where they're glowing wrong. I'm just trying to get these broad color areas in to make sure they all work, and then we could do some fine detailing and such. Let's see, this kind of similar deal. It's darker, but I think it's kind of the same. Almost silvery gold, almost like an electrum type looking deal. Oops, got a little bit up on the main helm. We can fix that. This is a really nice combo with having hues colored in. Yeah, that's got the right sort of one more silvery, one more gold feel that I'm looking for. So I may go in on a lot of this with that same silver. In fact, I mean, it won't be exactly because this is just getting highlights and darks, and that's not really what's happening here. But we can get that similar effect when we're only coloring in the darker ones, which is really neat. That is such a cool function. And look at that. It just, wow, it really, even for, tricked my own brain for a second. I thought that I was just coloring everything the same color, which maybe I was. I don't think so. Because that is the darker gold, and that is the lighter one. So yeah, no, it just looks exactly like I'd expect that to look in shadow. Wow. Wow. That's actually really cool. Whoops. Nope. Nope. Want to pan a little bit, and then let's get down here. This is where things get a little more complicated. I want the darker gold for this, at least for this section of it. I think we've got enough of a difference just in the value that I can just do this same one across the board. Again, somewhat sloppily, because we're just getting stuff blocked in right now. But I don't want to have to deal with the weird rastered edges of the fill tool. And truthfully, there is something cathartic about just scribbling, But don't be mistaken, that is pretty much all that I'm doing here. Okay. This one, I think, it's genuinely just a lighting thing. It's not actually a material difference between the lower and upper sections, so I'm going to try to stay true to that and also just have the same. same hue throughout was where the rest of that thought was going. Whereas this, that's not necessarily true. Some of it looks like it's uh, either tarnished, which gold shouldn't do, or potentially it's just like metal that was overlaid with gold, or it's just the rot's got into it, got dirty. I mean, Malenia's busy. She's not, really not. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's doing things. They're just not things that should take as much of her time as they do. Okay, we can try doing this all in the same full gold too, but I think it's going to end up drawing more attention than we actually want, and then it actually should. Yeah, not just a value difference down here. I mean, we could have represented a fair bit of that with a value difference, but we're not messing with that for now. Um, Let me go for a more grayer one, although this is probably actually going to not look horribly different. Hmm. Nope, it didn't, because it is a value difference that's, I mean, a hue as well, but value is a large chunk of it. So I may need to just actually get a gray color in there. There we go. But I think we've got sort of two shades in our palette for golds. So I'm going to, actually, nope, not that. But I am going to get our dark one, add it here. Nope, nope, didn't want to do that. Get our dark one, add it to the front, grab our lighter one, and add that as well. So we got both of those. Let's work on some, I guess, some reds. That's going to be hard to find a good red because reds are really strong. Um, and this hair especially is obviously a super strong red. Definitely, I would say leaning more towards the orangey side than the pinkish side of the red spectrum, although like some of the parts, especially right in here, feel like they could be on the edge. I think we're going to go with this one for now. We're going to see how this looks. Knowing full well that it's most likely going to be way too saturated. And surprise, surprise, it's way too saturated. Doop, 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 doop. It's interesting that Elden Ring, two of the biggest rival factions, have like borderline the same color scheme. It makes a lot of stuff very confusing. Because you've got Radon and you've got Malenia. And I just realized I'd never remat my pen. No wonder stuff felt stinking weird. That'll make things easier. Okay, yeah, I have much better pen control now. There's something to be said for freeforming it, but I don't think that's what we wanted. Okay, let's chill on the saturation a bit with this. Oh, yeah, I mean, that is more chill saturation, but actually, that may not have been the issue, because this looks a little too bland, truthfully. Although not horrible with the helmet. Um, More saturation, but darker. Similar result, weirdly. Oh, right, because I'm still on like really light layers. Let's see how this looks on darker layers. Okay, I mean, still not great. Actually, not horrible for this, but not right. Hmm. Go for really saturated. That ends up looking super bright anywhere you put it. Like I got neon glow stick and just spilled it on the art piece. Not ideal, is it? We can also go for a slightly more orangey red. Like, I don't want a ton, just like a hair. Maybe like a salmony color? No, that's got the same vibrance issue. Hold on. Let me. Yeah, there is kind of an orange hint. Well, it makes sense there's an orange hint where the light hits it and not so much where it doesn't. If we're being smart, then we'll actually like use color contrast in our shadows and do some creative stuff. We'll see if we get there. It'd be on its own stinking layer if we do. Um, Gold and red should not be on the same layer in the first place, so I'm really just sort of feeling things out right now. But maybe it does need to be two reds almost. Because it's not just a value difference between the light and the dark, because our light source is slightly yellow or golden, which again makes sense for myriad reasons, including just non-Elden Ring reasons if you're outside, um, or inside with a bad light bulb, or various things. I realize part of that's the neck and not the hair, but like I'm just gonna leave it for now. It's a bold one, and I do think we ought to have a different one for down here. I'm just trying to figure out anything that's going to be. That one actually needs to be fairly desaturated, doesn't it? Because it still needs to be. Yeah. Problem is, this one in particular, for whatever reason in my head, still just looks like I'm putting a translucent layer over the real color. It doesn't look like it's actually the real color. I need to figure out what's up with that. Whoa, that's freaking wild. That the same as over here, and it's just in the context. Maybe because it's not layering it over the gold, is it? Oh, like over the white there, and over the white there, then over the white there. I think are all the same. So yeah, I think it just was the context of the gold around it made it look really, really faint and pale, which is interesting. Because that's really no different from like that. Figuring out color is so much eye trickery. It's very fun. Convincing it that two different colors are actually the same color in different lightings, making stuff look different depending on like different hues of its shadow, even though the literally is the same color hue and saturation of the main color. Like that stuff's there's a lot of neat stuff going on with color that I will openly admit I don't fully grasp. Get ourselves a nice, fairly cool brown in here. Guess I can get the edge of the belt, and that does give it a little more. Uh, the belt is the main, like buckles are definitely our main gold tone still. They really pop. And while I'm here, I'll do a little edge cleanup. Not too much though, just a hair. Ah, it really does bring that to life. And it helps bring the red next to it to life, because maybe it's just, if everything else is in grayscale and one thing's in color, the color kind of, if it's a mild color, it still pops a lot. Don't get me wrong, but there's also an out of placeness of it, at least with the way we're doing it. Or maybe it's just because the saturation of the color exactly matched the saturation of the grays, or not the saturation, the value, sorry, which makes sense with how we're doing this, but also would make sense that our brain sees some sort of weird connection there and it's like, hey, 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 what's happening? The skin tone is like gold but redder. Already got a fairly pale gold going on, so we can get like something like this maybe. Sure. Well, if it feels a little too yellow maybe, but we'll see. It's hardly a proper color palette and it's hardly proper color theory, but I gotta say this is better understanding value and what it's doing has helped me a lot with just picking colors that don't look garbage next to each other. I'm gonna make that not flesh tone, don't worry. Unless I forget, in which case do worry. Please worry. In fact, I'm probably gonna forget. Smaller brush, edge cleanup, like this. That's not hair. Much as my brain wants it to be hair, it's not hair. That is skin. This is technically that shadow. It's funny. I know I've put a ton of gold over this gray by accident. Especially the lighter gold. No, actually I didn't because I used fills. Never mind, because I was wondering why it didn't look too gray, but then, or too gold, but then I saw down here that, like, right, I was actually just careful about that. And then, of course, also down here, same skin saturation, same skin hue, different value. Amazing how much. I feel like I've learned a ton about HSV and about like figuring out colors in general that I had been just completely missing prior to this. Even though it's not quite the same one, I do think this is still the right color for this section of it too, part that isn't obscured by lines. Which, by the way, even if we pop the fine detail lines away, looking pretty decent. Pretty decent. Wow, yeah, okay. Obviously, we're not final, not remotely, and we haven't even done the fur color yet, which I ought to do. That's gonna be, oh, that's a brown that's like almost black, and it's got like the light tips. Oh boy. We're gonna pop one over here where it's almost gray, which is why it looks so mostly fine even as it is. But technically it ought to have just a hint more gray, and it'll help us clean up some edges that are a little off. Where other stuff sort of snuck in. Man, it's hard to even tell a difference on this one. Especially on the darkest gray, but even on these lighter ones. Like, I'm half just going off of memory of what I've colored already. This is the faintest sepia ever. Okay, and then we'll grab the skin tone again. Which, by the way, I've got my color picker set up so that it's not picking like the total final hue saturation value. It just picks what's actually on our like little color color fill layer. So whether I pick in the darkest part or the lightest part, as long as the color on this layer is the same, it'll pick up the same. It's super handy. The other one was I needed to get a little more of the red for the cloak in here. In fact, not skin colored. And yeah, okay. Look, is this amazing or perfect? No, of course not. And we've mostly just been fiddling around with it. But given how many times I have attempted to come up with color schemes and color palettes that actually work, um, and it's been a complete disaster, I'm really excited with this. I feel like we've unlocked something new. I feel like I don't know if the skin needs to be. I don't think it's lighter so much as slightly more red, just like a hair, or even like it may just be like a slightly rosy like reflection or shadow or something in there. I don't know. Um, the difference in the reds between the cloak and hair is good contrast, but it feels like they're both too bright still, which may be a failing on our value stage, truthfully, but that's okay. Man, okay. When you get values to this stage, figuring out colors, obviously it's still, a challenge and adds extra time. Like I've seen plenty of comic artists who do black and white work and they're like, "Oh, color, no." And we have a fairly concise palette for this because this is a headshot for an art piece already and that it's sort of like the promotional content for the game. And B, Malenia has a very defined color scheme. So we're not working with anything crazy here, nothing super out of the ordinary. Even so, even so, um, yeah, this has been really fast and easy. And this is without even having stuff on like the right layers at all. This is just purely because we figured out all of the value stuff before. And the value already adds texture. We've added a lot of shape with that we didn't have to think about colors when we were doing. Y'all, I think we got a new workflow for colored pieces, because holy cow. I mean, y'all even saw the singing color palette I came up with the Elden Ring stickers, which was also a like red, gold, brown. It had some purple stuff for counter contrast in the shadows and such. Which if we want to make this like a proper illustration, um, and we really want to make it look painterly, and we get like the tools and stuff to do that, then we would also want to be getting those like put a purple in the golden shadows and a little bit of blue in the red shadows because the high contrast makes it it's actually more how it actually looks in real life, but it also makes it pop off the page better. Let's see. I'm going to add everything to my palette. Don't worry, we won't be losing these colors. Um, and that is just the same gold, right? We could try that with this lighter one. I don't think it's going to do what we want it to, truthfully, but we can try it. Flatten the heck out of that. Holy cow. Although getting the contrasting stuff off again helps. But I do think even if we do that color in that section, this little bit still needs to be the other one. All that right there. It gives a little continuity with the belt buckles, but also it's just more what it actually like. It's just got more gold on it in the actual thing. Draws a little more attention to that section that I really want, especially to the weird proportions of the angle I managed to accidentally make on that particular clip clasp thing. But even so. Guess yeah, a little rosy around the face is always, and neck, and anywhere with skin, because you've got blood under there. Although with Malenia, I mean, stuff gets complicated. And too rosy ends up looking weirdly sallow. So we don't want to do that. Although, again, not the worst in Malenia's case. And it'll give worse contrast against the hair, but better against the helmet, which is where most of the contrast for this is anyway, so that's probably fine. And then I know I said I wouldn't forget, but I totally did, but I remembered again, so it doesn't count. Not a skin tone. I guess the other thing is technically we could do like the lips a different color. Like still I would say this muted red, truthfully. we're not looking for like crazy high contrast on this. Yeah, a lot of rough edges if we want to actually, go to town with this one. But I'm going to work on the red for the hair real quick because the cloak one's actually not bad. It's not exactly where I'd want it to be, but it's not bad. But the hair is missing. It's simultaneously. That's it. Too white. Got too much white in it. Unfortunately, that's a value issue. Um, we can try going straight down. I don't know that it's going to make a massive difference. Yeah, because, well, maybe it's not that it's too much white, because as we remove white, we end up just in this, like, really awkward gray. That's not horrible for the shaded parts, but is definitely wrong up here. Maybe what it needed wasn't white, but yellow. Of course, this is not going to be the right color for it. Not a bad golden tone. Not what we're looking for, though. Always try something more on the violet side of things. I really don't think this is going to be the answer. Yeah, see, look, it's turning into bubblegum. See. We can go for a really, really aggressive red, but yeah, this is just such a light value. That's just going to look like it's a more gray version, which actually isn't horrible. That's not horrible. I mean, it's not great in the shadows. It's got too much orange for that. Um, and it's still, but it's really good for these upper ones. And I don't really want to make the shadows in the upper different hues because, that's sort of the whole point is that it's the same hue with different values from the shade. Um, but we'll have to see because we did stick to 5 hues, which is, I still think, the right choice. Um, but we're going to have to think about if there's areas where that didn't quite capture it, or if there's actually a difference caused by saturation. Hmm. Ah, man, the pixeliness of the helmet really still shows through, doesn't it? That's what I get for using the fills. It's down here. I mean, you can obviously see the sloppy actual like line work, but that's not an issue at a large scale. The highlights are in the right place, and that's what matters. And this part, despite being pixelated, looks pretty good still. But these edges do not. Wow, wow. Yeah, I left a lot of just empty, unfilled stuff on there, didn't I? That's okay, but yeah. Hmm. Tell you what, I am going to go ahead and take our break for tonight a little early, so I can think about how we want to approach next. Because there's kind of 3 things I can think of tonight for how we could wrap out today. We can continue fiddling with the colors, really try to get those hues locked in, which would not be a bad choice. We can, um, pardon. We can instead go for cleaning up the edges. We can just say these colors are the right ones. Let's make sure that they're all filling in the right place, clean out all the weird gaps, except where we want the weird gaps. Maybe get into a little bit of texture with that. Probably not too much, though. At this point, I'm sort of relying on just the rest of the edges we did with the valuing to do the texture. We may have to rethink that on the helmet a little bit, but pretty much everywhere else, I think that's actually going to be best choice, because overdoing it otherwise, or if we do texture stuff, we should do it on the value layer. And then option 3, I'm really struggling to even remember it. Y'all can tell I'm a little more tired than I have been recently. Um, so yeah, option 1, keep refining the colors. Option 2 is filling in with these colors, like getting it all cleaned up, and maybe doing some texture work. And thanks, Windows security. If I hadn't lost my train of thought before, I definitely would have by now. I don't know. I'm sure there was a third one. I don't remember what it was. I don't think it was the one I actually. It was the one that was that in my mind I was like, that's tempting because it's easy, but it's also not going to result in good work, so I shouldn't do it. Um, so whatever it was, I think this is just a sign that we ought to gently but firmly deposit it in the garbage can, and consider with the other two. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Either we're going to keep fiddling with colors, which if we want to do any more color fiddling, we ought to do it now. Or we're going to go start messing with not actually the values themselves, but the edges of the values to give better texture on the metalwork. I think it's really good on this one. Like this little dent here, really happy with how that turned out. Need to figure out some similar ways to represent texture up here effectively. So we'll have to get creative with that. And then also filling in the edges so that it's actually lined up well. Oh yeah, option 3 was also like jump right into shadows and maybe some counter colors. And I'm not 100% sure we want to mess with that right now. If we do mess with that, I'll be honest with y'all, I'm going to try to stick to our existing shapes and forms from the value layer. So if we do like if we end up deciding that to contrast the gold, any shaded gold needs a purple hint, it'll still be just like the existing shadows here. I'm not going to do new edges using that. So those are sort of the 3 possibilities, but as you can see, my brain is like seizing up a little bit, right? Not literally, it's not a seizure. But like I clearly need to sort my thoughts a little bit on what I want to do next because truthfully, when we started this project, I didn't think this far ahead, at least not with any sort of detail. I thought as far ahead as like, colors. And I'd had such bad luck, I genuinely considered just going back to low spec, but and by bad luck, I mean I didn't stinking understand what I was doing, and so my palettes looked bad. I could follow some formulas and get stuff that looked decent, but I had no control over where they actually ended up. Okay, I couldn't have made a two-tone palette where I actually picked 2 hues. It would be one was just sort of following a formula in my head of like how far you go around the color wheel to get another hue, which can get a decent result, but gives you very bad control over the actual piece. So I think we're getting somewhere. But yeah, so I'm going to sort through those 3 options. One is refine colors. 2 is clean edges, plus add texture at value layer. And I'm writing this down this time. Here. And 3 is actually I'm going to put this with 2. We can do refine colors and choose contrast colors or shadow colors. Well, they're contrasting shadows. So one of them is changing our palette, and the other one is changing our forms, basically. Both are perfectly reasonable, and probably both are a good idea to get this to a finished state. So I'm thinking we will have this one, and hopefully between today's stream and then the 27th and 28th, we'll have a nice February Malenia. And then, hopefully over this weekend, assuming I have the time and focus, we will jump in and maybe start something fresh. I've developed a new, I'd say it's fair to say developed. It's not one I read anywhere. It's just sort of a refining of stuff I've read plus my own experimentation. That's what developed means. I've come up with a new method that I want to use, and I'm sure someone else has done it, but new to me, and I hadn't seen it anywhere else. To try to capture forms without getting lost in the detail, because obviously that's a weakness I personally have. And it's really bad when I'm trying to set up like silhouettes and poses with enough detail to still like know what's going on, but not so much that it's a problem. And everyone's going to say gesture, gesture. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Line of action is important, but gesture drawings themselves have not proven helpful for me because, and this is the key thing, they're great independently, but I need a little more control over the anatomy when I'm actually doing something. If I'm figuring out silhouettes and stuff. Like, I need more detail than the quick little 7-line gesture drawings that I can currently manage are going to pull off. Obviously, pro gesture drawings are different. They're going to be able to capture so much more detail in just a little bit. But I'm not there yet, and my gesture drawings aren't helpful. So they're great practice for keeping up with odd poses and making sure stuff doesn't get too stiff. But right now, just having a good line of action and then figuring out the anatomy and then going back and thinking about gesture a little bit is sort of a better process for me. So we'll probably do that once we get to our next illustration. I'm going to do some brainstorming off stream about how exactly I want that one to look composition wise and like content wise, because I've found that coming up with that piece on stream is really tough. Brainstorming on stream is tough. Tweaking and editing and implementing on stream is fun and easy, and I can talk while I do. I mean, it's not easy, but it's doable. But composition requires like 100% of my focus. Maybe someday I'll get better at it, but that's just going to take practice and repetition. So, yeah. In sum, next time next half of the stream, we're either cleaning up the edges of the values and adding a little bit of texture on the value layer, or we're cleaning up the colors and choosing some shadows and contrasting colors that'll stay within the lines already established by the values. Those two things are the last steps for Malenia, and then we'll get started on the next illustration, which, as of this moment, is definitely feeling like a Mikola type deal. Because even looking online, there's not a lot of Mikola art. I mean, sure, we only have literally 2 references to go off of. Um, Technically 3, but one of them is a single illustration where Mikola is unconscious and being carried away at a weird angle where you can't see his face or her face or their. Mikola is intentionally confusing and a very fun character. Um, and I'm not even talking about Saint Trina because we do have different depictions of Saint Trina, but that's not who I'd want to illustrate, even though it is also probably Mikola. Definitely Mikola. But yeah, not a lot of art of Mikola because there's only 2 references in game where you actually have visuals, and one of them is just an intro sequence illustration, and the other one is 2 statues in the Halig tree, which people are usually busy not dying. So, yeah, we'll see. But more of that to be figured out when we come back. So I'll see y'all in just a few moments. Can you hear me now? Aha! Okay. Hello, howdies and salutations, everyone. I am sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My audio driver has been a little weird, I guess. I don't know why my headset would disconnect being able to use microphone across the computer. Like, not just in OBS, but Spotify only disconnected from OBS. So I don't know. There must have been some software thing that ticked and it confused. Either OBS ticked something and it confused the computer, or the computer ticked something and it confused OBS. No idea. Oh, hey! Excellent timing. Impeccable as always. Okay, let's work on this hair color. Oh, even better! Yes, you were welcomed after a few minutes of nasty audio problems. That's how it goes. It was meant to be. It was all so that you could get your proper greeting. Okay, let's see. Still not thrilled with the hair color, and obviously all this is just scratched in, so we'll have to do edge cleanup. But as we were saying before the break, methinks that this is a color stream, so I ought to be focusing on the color palettes for this one. That said, yeah, so we'll probably spend the rest of this stream refining and like finalizing our color palette, and then next stream we'll go ahead and clean up rough edges and add some texture at the value layer, and then I mean I think that'll basically be it. We're pretty much there. Nice Twitch icon. Let's see. Okay, I'm actually quite happy with where our gold tones have landed. They're not quite in the original, but they're in the same like unalloyed gold spirit, and I think they look good. I think they'll work well with other things. Also, this section as a whole is a little too light. Makes it jarring with the black contrast. Less of an issue with this one. That's fine if it catches light, but I think we ought to go for a slightly darker here. Although, I mean, again, the value on that layer is what the value is, so limits to how much I can actually make it darker. We can try. Not if I mess with the value layer, of course, but on our color layer. No, that's still the same amount of light, it's just more gray. That's what I was afraid of. We may just have to deal with that one. We've always had, from the start, we've had contrast questions about this one section. I don't think it overall causes a problem in the grand scheme of the thing. Meh, let's just leave it. I think that's, at least this captures the right, like, hue, and the value's just going to be what it's going to be. That's okay. Oops. Okay, let's... I know we're not doing a lot of edge cleanup on this stream, but this one I needed to just so I could actually, like, get a better idea of how this looked, because so much of it was the wrong color. Let's see. Our skin tone there, we can sort of refill back in on that and on that. There we go. Yeah, it basically just looks gray. That's fine. I think it's technically... Actually, it may have gone with the same color as that is. Let's at least try it with this color. A little more, because it's going to be closer to that, but it's not going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. It's a little better. Too close, too fast. Sorry. There we go. I do have to get these edges, because when zoomed out, I think it exaggerates some of those pixels, and we end up with looking like gray and splotchy. Not quite what we want. I mean, it is a pretty close to gray-brown in any case, but at least we're seeing it properly now. Okay, we've got this nice bit of red here. I think that's... Obviously, it doesn't quite one-to-one with the original, but I think it's reasonable. Let's see. Oh, that's a thought. One other thing we can do, and this is a thought for maybe an experiment later. I don't think it'll be what we do for the finished piece, but mainly because I kind of like our high contrast value thing we've got going on here, even with the color. The black is obviously a really high contrast, but I'm kind of down for it. And obviously, definitely in the grayscale, I think it looks cool. We've tried our muted version, and it ends up washing out a little bit. The true answer would probably be that some of this stuff down here would need to be darker if we wanted to do that. But instead, I think we're going to be leaving it as is with the really dark darks and the really light lights. But just as a note for the future of what we could do, if we wanted to still do the value roughly the same way we have and not have to think about hue at all, but we also wanted to get those contrasting colors in there, which is something we want to look at, both like purples for the shadows and golds for some of the lights. Instead of just doing that on this same layer, we could essentially put a layer below this that is another hint over the values there. And then, once we put this on top of it, it'll be an interesting mix. We'll see how it works. Anyway, I'm just mostly thinking out loud for that one. We'll see what we end up choosing for that. But yeah, gold good, brown where it's at. I think the collar gray is pretty reasonable. We could go a tiny bit more brown with it, but like not a whole lot. One place I'd be curious where the more brown would, if it would look good or not, is on this. And yeah, you can see it, like, it's so bright it doesn't make a huge difference regardless. Even, I mean, we could scoot it way over here and we'd be able to see some differences. But even then, it's fairly mild. I'm down for something that's got a little more brown in it, truthfully. I just worry that brown doesn't contrast as well with red, so we might lose some of the contrast if we go all in on this one. I do think it looks good on these super light sections, though. Oh, it also does look a little like the skin color. Okay, let's just do like one section of the collar and see how that looks. We'll just stop at sort of the bend here. Honestly, yeah, I kind of do prefer it with that brown now that I'm seeing it. Let's go ahead and do that all the way up. And as I said at the start, we're just blocking in colors right now, so obviously we're not really messing around with details or getting clean edges or any of that. That's all for cleanup. Step one is making sure our palette's good so that we don't have to fancy detail everything in 6 times when we change the color. You know, that brown actually really kind of tied stuff together. Is that in any way close to this one? Yeah. What if we just make that one thing? Because obviously in the different contexts they're going to be different. Or, like, this fabric is not the same color as this truthfully, but having that be one color sort of makes the palette more consistent. The brown does tie nicely with the gold, even if it doesn't contrast it as well. Let's do that. That'll be our that one will be our palette brown. I think that actually did a lot to help with the contrast being too strong too. Yeah, okay. So that really leaves just the one area, and it kind of almost put a better context on this one too. This doesn't look as out of place because it doesn't have the super strong gray next to it, even though they're the same. They're literally the same value, but they're different hues. Helps it all blend together well because it's not really the focal point. Cool. Then the last thing to look at is the hair, which also, again, the more I'm looking at it, having this not be as jarring has also made this not look as similarly jarring. I still want to do some tweaks on it, but I'm not as unhappy with that color as I was at the start. And did we keep the same red throughout? Yeah, we did. Okay. I know we went through a lot of iterations on that. Oh, dang. We're way up at this level. Interesting. We could probably drop that down a little bit, see if it ends up looking too gray. Yeah, I mean, that just... it looks washed out enough. I mean, even if we remove the other red around it so there's not the contrast that'll make it look more washed out, it still looks kind of too washed out. Getting too close to this one. Not bad, but it doesn't have the same pop that this does to sort of set it aside. Of course, on the flip side, if we went up, I think we get too much pop, truthfully. But I do think it's worth looking at. Maybe you have to go up a tangible amount. Let's, yeah. Because that's obviously starting to look considerably more bold. But maybe almost so much that it gets kind of like a neon effect. Like, not actual neon lights, but just when you get like neon markers and you're like, wow, these are really bold next to each other. Like, because now this one looks a little washed out by comparison, but I think it fits the overall slightly muted palette while still being kind of the focal point itself. Long story short, I'm pretty happy with our main palette colors, so I'm going to go ahead and add them to our palette up here. Let's get our one central brown in, and just to make sure this is the same as this, right? Good, yeah. I'm trying to keep this to a reasonable minimum of colors. Let's add our brown, and let's add our two reds. Oh, and the skin tone. Let's add the skin tone, which is in and of itself. Nope. Rats. Okay, fine. Skin tone. Then the brown, I guess. Then red muted. And red bold. Okay, so we got our 6 grays. They do not correlate with the red to brown palette on the top. And in fact, if we had all of these on a plain layer where we didn't have it where the values were all matching the underneath, I bet they would look absolutely garbage next to each other. Let's try it. Because I don't think there's anything on layer 3. I must have just misclicked new layer at some point. Wouldn't be the first time. But yeah, let's just make some big ol'... come on, we can do bigger than that. There we go. Red, muted red. Even if we try to make this into like a halfway, like not awful gradient, it's just not good. Like they kind of work together, but it's just kind of a gross color palette. And I would argue that it works together worse than it does over here. Ugh. It's not terrible. They still kind of work, but it's not great compared to having these standardized hues. So basically what I'm saying is that if we wanted to actually export a palette from this that would look good, we would need to get more colors because we wouldn't just have the grayscale underneath and the above, but we'd have to actually get like all 3 of the reds, all 3 of these reds as well, many of the different gold tiers and so on. And we'd have to make sure that we're figuring out what it looks like at the end result rather than the color that's actually on our color layer here. But that's all fine, because for now, I think we've got a decent palette. So, I want to look into shades. Now this, where could I put this where it wouldn't break things? Because that's going to break things. Even if I, actually no, if I clip this layer below, it's fine. Okay. Hue plus saturation. Man, the layers on this are stinking all messed up. I mean, they're fine, it's just kind of messy. I'm glad I've kept them as organized in folders as I had. Otherwise, like, can you imagine if all of the fine detail outlines folders were uncollapsed in here and just freeform? I'd never find stinking anything. Not a lot going on in the inks, though. But yes, so what I wanted to look at was sort of counter color is not the word. but coming up with nice shadow colors, basically. So instead of this one, I want something that's got a decent contrast. I'm going to literally actually look at the stinking color wheel for it and just pop straight to the other side. See where that gets us, just as a starting point. Oh yeah, the layer's hidden, so... Hide this, and we get our nice blue on there. Unfortunately, because of the way this works, it'll just shift it to the same value. So let's actually try just having this on top. I'm sensing some slight problems with this. Actually, no, we just make it a color layer, just like the other one. Now the hues will, or the values will all match, as they should. And the hues will be experimental. That said, I'm not sure these will look good. This is an experiment, after all. You know what? Since we're not worried about that much precision with this, we're just testing stuff. We'll just take the fill tool and have a quick go at it. Okay. Yep, I'm already sensing some... Wow. Yeah, you can tell where my previous scribbly lines were because they're messing with the current ones. Yeah, I think our shadow sections are going to be too big of blocks for this to really look great. Straight across puts us at a similarly periwinkle blue. I forget that the skin and gold tones aren't that different. But if we do a lot of this, I think you'll see that it actually ends up with an interesting effect. It just may be entirely too strong for what we're trying to do here. Yeah. Really washes this out. We'll get to that, don't worry. That's right, because we've got the auto hue adjustment, I can even just go for these ones and it'll still have a decent hue for them. Now, let's look at our red. Pull straight across, get this kind of nice aqua green looking in here. Go for that for our undertone. Before anyone panics that I'm absolutely destroying this, this is an easily take-offable layer. I don't have a B, that's it. It's an easily take-offable layer. Oh boy, this one, because so much of it is a shadow, this one might actually just straight up not work. Just gonna look like it's a green cloak. Similar deal with the brown. Once again, ending up mostly in the blues, because this is a abnormally warm color palette from what I usually would do. Yeah, we've got too much of this that's in the shadow for this to work, but if I'm clever about it, I can remove some of this and we can sort of pick and choose something that'll look good. The last one I want to get, though, is this. Once again, throwing us into the blues. No surprise there. Let's see. Whoops. Yep, okay, I'm not surprised to see that that looks a right mess. However, if we take some of these and chill with them a little bit, it probably wouldn't look too bad. The main issues are, I would say, anything where the counter color has become more bold, like covers more ground than the main color, which is really just an issue in these two sections. We need to chill on those. And unfortunately, because we got such strong super blacks and the really deep shades, I can't do the counter color in there very much. But if we look at individual sections, as much as it's jarring, it does still read. The skin tone, not so much. But like the hair, actually, that does kind of work as a shadow. It's a little too light. If we'd really planned this, then I would only be using these counter colors in the deepest, darkest shadows, not at all these mid ones. But even here, like this, it's still believably a shadow. It's just a little bit of a stylized looking one for what I'd normally go for. Anyway, just something interesting to experiment with. Let's see. It is still something that I could do in like the really deepest of shadows, and in like little small sections like in here where we've got some deep shadows. And even on the gold, it doesn't look bad. I just happen to prefer the default color. And on the hair, it honestly doesn't look bad. Skin, it does look bad. I'm not going to deny it. You know, didn't work on that. Although, I mean, it worked on the one under the helmet. Like the nose there, I think it did work. So it may just be part of it is just a volume issue. If we get too much of the counter, it becomes the main, and it's confusing. But like for these, like that green and that red do just kind of work together, and it makes the hair pop a lot. Still gonna stick with, you know, the original. I guess I don't need to erase all this per se, because we can just turn the layer off. Zoop. Back to normal. Looks good. Looks perhaps, well, a little plain after all that wildness, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if we ever wanted to try to start, if we started a piece keeping in mind that this was the type of coloring and shading we were going for, I think we could get some really interesting results. That said, I do want to do just a little tiny bit of adding color to some of the highlights. Not all the highlights, mind, but just some of them are specifically more golden than they end up looking here. And so I'm going to take an optional, let's see. We'll just keep that layer there. We're going to make a new one. We're still going to keep it on the color because I want to keep these values set. We've established them. I think they look good. And they work for what we're trying to do. Let's see if we can't add just a hair of gold. I mean, heck, we have a palette has gold. We could even try just layering some of this gold on it, but I think it's going to potentially drown it out entirely. Yeah. So we'd have to make this both a color layer and a fairly low opacity layer. Which, of course, is not remotely bold enough to do anything good other than turn that into a skin tone, which isn't great. Perhaps there's a middle ground to this. Or a less metallic gold and more of a highlight yellow. That might be a good option. Let's see. We'll just keep experimenting with it. Sort of the name of the game today. Like some of the edges down here, it's a little more of a gold. This might be something that we'd actually want to do with a texture brush of sorts, but we're kind of veering away from that in this particular piece. So maybe we can get hints of it, but I don't know that it actually helps all that much. The chin one's not bad, truthfully, but the others, like... I don't know. It doesn't point to the sun's direction well. It doesn't look warm quite the way. That is one thing that our current color palette doesn't really do. Is it's despite being warm colors, it doesn't have quite the warmth of the actual like orange glow that this one does. Almost something that would need to be like not a color layer, but a screen layer. Probably not a multiply, right? Yeah, not a multiply. Well, it does look like a warm orange. It's just not exactly what we're going for. On the one hand, there's a part of me that's thinking, like, no, don't mess with any of this. You're trying to stick with exactly what you outlined in your values, although I don't know why I'm so dead set on that in particular. Other than the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, I mean, we can just make this the highlight color in all of these. And we could just have that be the highlight down here too, and it wouldn't look wrong. We could even have it be the highlight on the skin tone, and it would look good. So the question is just, what should it actually be as a color? I'm going to put that one away. Let's just make a new one. We're going to make it a color layer, because rather than trying to overlay anything on it, let's just assume that we had a glow shade in our repertoire. It's supposed to be a goldeny glow. Be this, but not aggressively saturated, just a little more than it is currently. Just going to take our fill pen, and that already looks far too yellow and far not enough glow. But I'm going to go ahead and fill in our areas, because then we can just use a slider to sort of... There's easy ways to tweak afterwards. Hey, not that. Could make this whole highlight color have this slight tint. Only the brightest one, of course. And of course on the skin tone as well. Got more of a glow, but this is definitely not the right glow, you know? We can make it more faint. It still does add some warmth without losing too much. But it also still looks generally fairly flat and kind of distracts by putting gold all over the place, which isn't what we want. Maybe let's go for a more orangey tone. Make it clear that this is something a little different. Then I'm just going to... Ah! I've turned Malenia into a penny! There we go. Let's... Nope, still wrong. Oh, what I actually need would be a layer that clips onto this one if I want to do that. Okay, 1 second. Or I guess I could just... Hold on. Edit. Tonal correction. Hue, saturation, luminosity. I need to actually get the darn. And this isn't going to line up right, because that's going to just be how much it corrects it, not setting it to a specific color. Okay. So much for cheapo, easy way out. Fine. This immediately looks too flesh toned to be ideal, but maybe that'll help it not contrast too aggressively. But it still looks really red. I mean, works with this palette, don't get me wrong, but like, is it actually going to look like a glow? Kinda. Kinda does. I guess if I were being honest, I'd have to get some stuff up here too, but at least like a little bit in there. But truthfully, kind of like it without. I do honestly think that the grayscale is the best look. Like, it communicates clearer, and I think it looks cool. But I think that these colors are a good fit without perhaps the hue or the bright, without that additional glow. Now, don't get me wrong, that glow's nice, and it would be something that'd be worth checking out in the future, especially because I've heard CSV version 2, whenever they release it, and I know there's a lot of controversy around the payment and subscription models and all that, but truthfully, like, they've been pretty... The initial announcement was bad, but the versions they've released since then actually listen to people, and they seem like viable business models, both for Clip Studio Paint to actually stay in business and for it to still be affordable for people. So, like, I don't know, I have no objections to the current plan. Or even like V2 of it. I think they're on V3 of the plan now. But long story short, the new tool supposedly will have some interesting auto shading options that would be worth checking out. That wouldn't be what I'd want to do for the final, but can sure help you figure out where shadows ought to be, which is kind of neat. So let's see. Think about what else we'd want to work on tonight, because that was basically... I did like the high contrast shadows. I just think that it's something where I'd need to think the piece through a bit more to make it work, and like think it through at the value stage. I don't really want to go back on this piece at this stage and fix it, but I do want to consider it for future things. Maybe not the Mikola piece too either, but like for some smaller sketches, I think we could get some really interesting creative stuff with that. So I guess that just leaves one final step. Granted, it's a bit of a final step, and it's actually there's two final steps. Step A is clean up some of the textures where they're not clear, and that would be done just on the value level. So I'm not worrying about colors, but just here. We would want to add some better metal textures to the helmet is the main thing. I'm not even worried about the hair looking too flat or too cartoony. It's gonna do what it's gonna do. I'm not worried about the skin, similar deal. I'm fine with those looking as they are. But the helmet, I do want to give it a little less perfect smoothness and a little more janky bumpy. It's pretty good in here, and even in here, honestly, these have turned out well, although I don't like how rough the edges on them are, so I may try to clean that up a little. And this is good, but the actual, like, wider sections of the helmet, and especially here, because this is kind of a focal point, I want to get a little more texture in there. So that should be interesting. And then step 2 is once we have the texture finalized, and we already do for some areas, so I could start some of this tonight even. We go into the colors, and instead of just having sloppy thrown down nonsense, we actually fill them in the right place. Now that we've sort of figured out what we want to do, and this honestly, truthfully, isn't going to take too long, because most of the like contrasts and edges are figured out with the hues already, or the values already. So a lot of stuff is actually going to be fairly simple to do right. Especially like on this where it just borders the black, so like it doesn't matter if I go way over the line, because who cares? But you know, little sections like this, it'd be nice to actually maybe color within the lines just a little bit. Where it's meeting the fabric. You have a clear border there. Get whatever nonsense happening there out of the way. And then clean up any overlap, either from old colors. So it's going to be a pretty chill stream next time. I mean, okay, the texturing is going to take some thinking. That one's going to be pretty active, but like this last little bit, this is not complicated. This is literally like children's coloring book levels of difficulty. Not even those like coloring books for adults, because those have lots of weird edges and also try to be kind of like, I don't know, vaguely spirit. Some of them seem to aim for like a type of spirituality through meditation through coloring books, which is an interesting take. Honestly, there's some fair to like something that is rhythmic and mindless. There's definitely a form of meditation that can be found there. For example, I find it extremely calming to enter data into spreadsheets, which is the nerdiest, stupid thing ever. But, I mean, hey, if I gotta do it for the job, it's kind of nice that it's actually relaxing sometimes. Of course, if the data quality is bad and I can't mindlessly do it, but I have to check a lot of junk every time, then that's not particularly relaxing. But yeah, a spreadsheet where you got all the numbers in one place and need to put them somewhere else, that is my jam. Scratch is exactly the same itch as stinking cross stitch, which is wild. I can't believe that those kind of like function the same for me. But seriously, if you like cross stitch, try spreadsheets, or vice versa. Oh, this isn't quite the same red in the lower section, after all. That is an interesting discovery. I think it's... no, I think I was just off palette. I had grabbed the wrong red. Okay. Is that still that one? So yeah. Yep, I just had the wrong red. Let's fix that. Nope, now it's the lighter one again. Darker, lighter, darker, lighter. Ugh, what a mess. Well, I want whichever one's in the top here, and that one's consistent. So that's the one that we're going with, and that is lighter. So lighter it is. No, wait! There's 2 shades up here, too. I assume this is actually the same as the darker one. We're going to go with the slightly lighter one. We're going to spread it across the board. It'll look fine. See, this is what I mean. This is super no effort to color within the lines, because up until I get to an actual border with a different hue, none of it matters. I mean, it is important that I actually not miss weird sections and leave gaps of the wrong color red like I have done up to this point. But, yeah. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Let's get a smaller one and actually do some of the... Okay, not that small. We can still get it closer to the edge before we get to that level of fine detail. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. Now we can get a 12 point and actually like zoom in here. Try to make this halfway decent. And most likely still kind of fail, but that's okay. Because I can always take the gold back at it. And in any case, this section isn't exactly eye-catching, it just needs to roughly look the right shape. So I'm fine with not spending energy there when it can be better spent on more important things. Energy management is kind of, and like specifically like enthusiasm management is an underappreciated part of art. Because you don't need enthusiasm to do good art. You don't. You can do it when you're tired and bored and like stinking exhausted. However, it sure makes it easier when you're enthusiastic. And so if you can maintain your enthusiasm a little bit, it makes things nicer. I guess I don't really have a line to go off of, so I'm just shaping it myself. We can, of course, put the fine details outline back on. We want to see what it ought to look like. But I also kind of like having a little more pop on that. May just clean up that edge so it tapers better. And then boom. Okay. Okay, wow, there's so much of the hair I still need to get into the right hue, because these two are so close that it's not obvious at a glance when it's in the wrong one. Still looking good on the out view? Yes, we are. I'm going to fill this in all the way, and then I'm going to go at it from the furs direction, because I think that's going to be easier to get better lines. And then let's clean up all the weird stray pink edges and any of that in there. I'm not going to worry too much about keeping the edge of the gold correct, because that's one we're going to do last, because we're actually doing some texture and changes in there. So I don't care so much about staying in the lines on that one. But this one, I think we're pretty much set. So I'm going to try to make sure that it's got good borders all around. Which obviously at this point is just kind of down to this. And it looks like most of the issue is the gold over expanding into it, not the other way around. So be able to just get that sorted pretty quick. Zoop. Okay. Got our brown, we can clean up that little edge. I think the pauldron is basically set, and the hair is set except for where it borders the helmet. Some other areas we can get sorted out pretty quick here, because this stage is like so fast and so simple. Now that we've done all of the heavy lifting beforehand, like this is a stage that a lot of people like. Colors is a heavily feared stage, dreaded by many people, and there's plenty of valid reason for that. Don't get me wrong, but I think one of the problems with it is we try to tackle too many things at once when we're working on it. And so if you can tackle sort of the shapes of where the blocks of color and light and dark need to be on just that value layer, and then you can tackle what the actual different hues need to be on their own separate phase, I think it's probably, even doing 2 phases will probably be faster than trying to figure all that out at once until you've got like consistent color palettes for what you're drawing and it's something familiar and you're not having to figure stuff out as you go. Oh, yeah, let me clean up the edge around this. Holy cow, I got real sloppy on it. Totally forgot that I hadn't sorted that one out. And again, being kind of splotchy in this section's okay, both because it's super zoomed in, so the level of detail, it's not going to actually attract that much attention. However, it's still nice to be able to clean it up when we notice it. It'll look better if we get it right. Let's see, I think we already cleaned up the belt and the belt loops. So let's just continue on this scarf here. I'm going to work on... I know it's not actually a scarf, but it looks like a scarf in the current context, and so that's what we'll be referring to it as. Easy to clean up on that edge. The black is just going to be where it's going to be, because I need to remember these lines aren't the end-all be-all. I need this to look good even without them. Means that technically some of this probably ought to be fed back to the gold. Just like real. Any of that really weird lighting contrast, let's just make that gold. Because it makes sense for the gold to have some awkward reflections and shadows there. It makes less sense for fabric too. Definitely not that. There we go. Yep, you can definitely see where we've sort of moved away from the line work, but I'm treating the values as sort of the final answer of truth as to where stuff needs to be, more than where the lines were. So let's try to keep it sorted accordingly. Save, because we haven't done that in a while. And truth be told, even getting all this cleaned up, it's probably not going to look hugely different on the when we zoom out to the final piece, because this is all pretty detail work. But for a few spots like this, it'll make it pop better. You can actually go in here and follow where it ought to be. Clean up any where we're getting sort of weird red edges where they shouldn't be. Anything like that. And this is an interesting conundrum. The fabric folds and gets caught up under the fur. So really, kind of ought to have like fur boundary into it, which we'll just sort of roughly do. Okay with that. Not okay with that stray mark though. Let's not do that. Okay. Let's see. Let's focus on getting the cloak good all the way down, and then we can work our way up to the collar, and then the skin, and then it gets back up to the helmet, which again we're going to be putting some more time into tomorrow. Actually, not tomorrow. Next stream, which is Monday. I'm going to try to just rough up this border a little bit. It doesn't have to be all the way, but some of the sections ought to have like the fuzz, or the fluff sort of poking its head in. And again, that is not going to make much of a difference on the final. Maybe a little bit. Especially if we really kind of give it some tufts. There we go. Okay, enough of that. We're not messing with forms too much at this stage, after all. Okay, skin tone. I can tell there's an old tone and a new skin tone competing in here. Let's make sure that we get the correct one in. Should that be skin, or should that be... No, that's cloth. That's a little bit of the cloth catching the light. Okay, that's fine. Hey, no. Again, the fluff sort of has its edge there, and the red kind of runs up into it. I'll go ahead and finish out the skin tone on this because it's faint enough that I'm going to not even notice the contrast is there, which means it's probably fine and I don't need to fix it, but I'd like to fix it so we've got some consistency. There, and we can even get like a little bit across on that one. This one goes back into needing to be the cloak, and its space has been heavily invaded over there. And down along here, we can just finish that out. This needs to be cloak. Technically, this is gold, but it's all in shadow, so no one's ever going to be able to see. Give it like a little tiny hint, but nothing really. Except that. This one over here, make sure what's red is red and what isn't isn't. Catch any weird stray gaps in the middle. And we're coming up on time, but we're really close and this part's moving fast, so let's just try to get through everything but the helmet if we can tonight. And then we'll take a look-see at some other stuff tomorrow. I'll really make sure all this is colored in, because I know it had a hard time even telling brown from gray on this one, so there's probably going to be a lot of weird, like I can barely see that was a gap there. Holy cow. I'm just going to try to do some really thorough sweeping ones anywhere in the center, and then we can just do nice cleanup around the edges. I can even do, we're going to clean this up later, so I can do some pretty sweeping stuff up here too. Not worried too much on that one, but definitely I've got some fabric that's about this color of brown actually, and it is always an interesting one because when I got it, I thought it was gray because of the lighting. That ended up being fine. I was just getting a scrap fabric to do some testing projects on, but it was an interesting surprise. Okay, I'm pretty confident with the lower edge of the fur. We've got the red scarf, we got the skin down there, we got these. Up here we got the hair. So it's just a matter of the neck and the inner collar, and then the face. So we'll just keep working our way around. We sort of went. I'm sure my sound effects were very helpful for understanding that. Let's see. Cleanup on this one's going to be a pain, but it's going to be easier to clean it up from the brown side than the red because the brown ones are jutting into the red and not vice versa. I can do just like a little bit here and stay within my boundaries. I'll still be good. Thought I saw a gap up here, but perhaps not. Again, it's super hard to tell. And it's definitely got some gap over here, though. Holy moly. Now that I look at it, it feels obvious, but even zoomed out, it stops being obvious. Let's get that fixed. Yay. Okay. Now let's work on the last of the skin tones. Well, I'm sure, again, we'll run into the helmet, and we're going to have to clean up every border with the helmet, but... that's okay. Having the rest of the piece sorted out will make that easier. That's, in fact, not the right color, even though it looks like it because of this part's in shadow. I feel like we ought to get like just a little bit of fluffage on that one too. Doesn't make sense for there to not be fluff there. But then we do need to get skin in down around there. But first off, before we do, let's look up here. Clean up this border with this piece. This border with this one without going over it, hopefully. Without going over it too egregiously. Then I need to clean up a lot in the middle here, and then we'll deal with the bottom border. Sorry, I haven't got much commentary. Just got lost in thought there for a second. Not the most helpful thing in the world when you're streaming. But there's, you know, again, this is just kind of like cathartic. You just go in, follow the nice little lines. Never get everything exactly perfect, so you just get close as you can. You say that that's been good. Honestly, now that I know I can beat it, I kind of want to fight her boss fight again. Like, I do really hope that one of the things they add... I know in Sekiro, they added the option to refight bosses. And I really would love that, because there's some boss fights in Elden Ring that are just really fun. But I don't want to have to replay the entire game to get to them. Only to be able to fight them once, and have to replay the entire game again to get to them. And like the community's had plenty of time to brute force test equipment and strategies and stuff on them anyway at this point. So it's not like keeping that option out is preventing the community from stumbling upon secret techniques or something. Like, it's been a year now. People have had time to find all that stuff. Oh, a lot of that other color patchiness in here. That's interesting. But I'd mostly sorted that out. Oh well. There are some downsides to experimenting with colors on the same layer as the actual final layer. Glad we didn't do it with the shadows, or we'd be finding like weird greens and junk in these nooks and crannies. Oh, right, same values. So there's literally not going to be a visible border there. Yeah, fine. Let's get in here. These nooks and crannies. We're nearly done. Now the question is, do we want it to look like the pink overlaps on the fur a little bit, or the other way around? I think we actually want the pink overlapping on the fur, because it'll look like it's just shining through from below it. But overall, that's looking pretty decent. Obviously, the actual gold of the helmet we're going to tweak, but I don't know if we'll tweak this lower section here. Very possible we will, but just in case we don't, I want to go ahead and sort it out. The upper part, yeah, whatever. We're definitely messing with all of that stuff again. But for this lower bit, we can do some cleanup. And especially for this little one, because like the odds of me coming back to it are considerably smaller. Just out of sheer risk that I'll forget it's there. Make it clear that that part's all skin, not the gold. I'll be clear where the edge of one is for the next. Okay, and then obviously edges inside, not as worried about. Do like a little cleanup on this one, I suppose. Getting caught up in it now. I don't want to. You can tell that like now I'm finally in the zone, and I'm like, I don't want to stop streaming. I want to keep doing the art. Only there wasn't work in the morning. Good work, I enjoy it, but let's see. Yeah, that's still the same red as that. Good. These are all still the same skin tones. Do you think we actually want to incorporate these little highlights in that? Okay. But then yeah, the helmet itself, I can clean up the sort of border edge, but I make no promises that that's going to be final. We didn't even like fill in the shadows for it. Wonder if it'd look better with that or without. One way to find out. Hey, nope, I messed up the scroll work on both of those actually. I don't know, I kind of like having that contrast there, but like I said, the helmet we've got a lot more that we need to still figure out on. Everything else I think is pretty good at this phase, but the helmet we're going to have to do some texturing on. But then, like, I don't know, that's kind of it. Just crazy to think about. And we can go ahead and let the red claim just like a little bit more on that edge. I'm just trying to get the black line in the realm of the gold, not anything else. So if we want to get in there and really keep this edge clean, we can do that. Okay. This is turning out pretty neat, y'all. Got a little more work on the helmet, and then I think we're going to be pretty set on this. Pallet looks kind of muted, but it also looks like it pops in the places it's supposed to. So, like, I don't know, I can't complain that much. Pretty excited with how this has turned out. Obviously, there's always going to be room for improvement, room to discuss improvement, and things that could do better next time, but, like, I don't know, at some point you just got to say, hey, look, I made a thing, and be content with it. And I'm mostly content with this. Obviously, I can still see places to improve, but the amount of improvement from the start of this piece to the end, I'm pretty satisfied. And I hope y'all are too, but as always, I am down for backseating. This is obviously, this is still a learning stream. I may be leading y'all on this conversation, but I'm also a student as much as a teacher. In fact, more so. I would say, I'm getting to the point where I'm an intermediate artist, but like it's still not upper end of intermediate yet. Plenty still to do. Plenty of skills still to figure out. But that will be for future streams, because for tonight, I think we're wrapping it up. To my excitement, I think we might actually have Malenia done by the end of February, and the shortest month of the year, no less. But we'll just find out on the next streams. So hope to see y'all there, and have a good one.